Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Thoughts, where quiet curiosity lies back under the stars and wonder gently takes its time. Tonight, we're going to float on the edge of a very gentle question. Not one with a straightforward answer, but one that glows softly at the borders of science and imagination. It's the kind of question you might only ask when the night is still and you're looking up at a sky full of silent, twinkling lights. The question is this: what if the stars are watching us back? We spend so much of human history watching the stars. Could it be, in some subtle way, that they watch us too? Now, I don't mean that literally, not with eyes or intent like a person or a deity. The stars aren't peeping down at us with telescopes or judging our every move. This isn't about finding literal eyeballs in the sky. It's more delicate, more philosophical. We're asking if the stars, in their own immense and quiet way, might have a kind of awareness, or if the universe itself notices the small flicker of our lives on this little planet. It's a strange thought, yes, almost like a fairy tale or a bit of ancient myth. And yet, it's quietly thrilling, isn't it? To entertain, just for a night, that the brilliant lights above could know we're here, or that they could be part of some grand conscious tapestry that we're also threads of. Before we wander too far into the cosmic woods, let's take a slow, deep breath together. Get comfortable. Whether you're winding down for sleep or simply letting your mind wander under the gentle glow of this idea, I'm glad you're here. Maybe you're listening from a place where it's nighttime and a few stars are visible outside your window. Or maybe it's daytime for you, the stars hidden behind a blue sky. But trust me, they're still out there, patiently shining beyond the daylight. Funny, isn't it? We're scattered across different places and times, and yet right now we're sharing the same little moment, turning over the same curious thought. If this kind of slow-burning cosmic question is your cup of tea, you might consider gently tapping the like or subscribe button. It helps this sleepy little signal reach other curious minds like a small beacon in the night, guiding fellow wanderers. No pressure, of course, just an invitation. The stars don't force their light on anyone. They simply shine, and those who need a little wonder can find it. In that spirit, let's begin our journey. Settle in, maybe lie back if you can, and let your thoughts slow down to the pace of the stars overhead. Let's slow ourselves to the rhythm of a turning galaxy, to the long, lazy sweep of starlight crossing the darkness. Tonight, we're not going to rush to any conclusions. We won't be arguing or insisting on anything. Think of this more as a quiet, nighttime walk through a landscape of ideas. We'll stroll through a bit of science, a bit of mythology, a bit of philosophy, all without hurrying. We'll pause to admire the view when something interesting glitters. We'll let every thought echo softly for a while before we move on. And maybe, by the end, we won't have an answer to our question. But we'll have spent some quality time with it, which sometimes is more meaningful than any answer could be. So where do we start? Perhaps we should start with ourselves, with the age-old act of stargazing. Picture this: a clear, dark night in an age before cities, before electric lights, before we fenced ourselves in with bright screens. You're an early human, maybe tens of thousands of years ago, lying on your back in a wide-open field or on a quiet hillside. Above you, the sky is a river of stars. The Milky Way spills across the heavens in a thick band of light. So many stars that it looks like someone brushed a streak of glowing dust overhead. On such a night, you might see thousands of stars with your naked eyes. They cluster in shimmering clouds, they blink and flicker. They seem to stare back, each one a tiny hole of brilliance in the deep black curtain of the night. In the distance, you hear the crackle of a campfire and the soft breathing of your family or tribe. There are animals out in the dark, perhaps, and many unknowns. But above, the stars are steady. They're distant, yes, but they're also familiar. They rise and set in patterns you recognize. They circle the sky year after year. They feel eternal, reliable, like silent guardians watching over the fragile life below. Is it any wonder that our ancestors filled the night sky with stories? To them, those lights weren't just balls of gas or scientific data points. How could they be when the concept of a ball of gas burning millions of miles away was a millennia from being understood? Instead, the stars were alive with meaning. They were gods, animals, heroes, ancestors, spirits. Many cultures imagine the stars as eyes, eyes of gods or eyes of those who came before, watching from the heavens. A legend of the Karanga people in Africa, for instance, held that the stars were the eyes of the dead looking down on us. In that same vein, some of their neighbors, the Swana, believed the stars were the souls of those long departed or even spirits of those not yet born, waiting their turn on Earth One. To the ancient Maori of New Zealand, the stars were kaitiaki, guardians and timekeepers, marking seasons and guiding journeys. The Chinese saw in the sky a great celestial bureaucracy, with the Jade Emperor and his court represented by stars, as if the affairs of Earth were mirrored and overseen by the heavens. The peoples of the Kalahari spoke of a girl who threw embers into the sky to create the Milky Way, a luminous path so that never again would anyone be lost in the dark. And across the world, countless parents have told their children that loved ones become stars when they die, twinkling down as a sign that they are at peace. Even the scientific names and stories we use today carry echoes of these old beliefs. Look up on a winter night and you might find Orion. To us, it's a pattern of stars, but to the Greeks, it was the figure of a mighty hunter placed among the stars by the gods. The star we call Polaris, the North Star, has been a faithful guide for travelers for centuries. It's almost like a benevolent eye watching from the north, keeping a constant position to help the lost find their way home. In a way, Polaris has seen uncounted journeys and secrets, from ancient seafarers crossing unknown oceans to modern hikers finding their way. In Persian lore, the star Sirius was Tishtriya, the divine archer. In Hindu tradition, the 7 stars of the Big Dipper are the Saptarishi, 7 sages eternally meditating in the sky. Everywhere, humans have looked up and felt that the lights in the sky were aware in some fashion, perhaps not aware of every individual action, but aware in a broader sense, aware of the rhythms of life, of right and wrong, of the need to guide and comfort, and sometimes to warn. The heavens were like a grand stage on which stories of meaning were written in light. We should acknowledge something. To ancient peoples, saying, "the stars are watching us," was not a metaphor or a cute notion. It was often taken quite literally, or at least mythically true. It made sense in their world. They didn't have the scientific understanding we do now, but what they did have was a direct, visceral relationship with the night sky. Try to imagine that relationship. No calendars on the wall, the calendar was the sky. The stars told you when the seasons were changing, when to plant or harvest, when the rains might come. Certain stars rising at dawn signaled the time of floods or the migration of the herds. The Pleiades cluster, those 7 little stars, appears in the evening sky in June for the southern hemisphere, and many African communities would take that as the sign to begin preparing the fields. The stars were practical markers, yes, but they felt intentional. They told people what to do in order to survive, almost like teachers or guardians. And when something unusual happened in the sky, a comet suddenly appearing, an eclipse blotting out the sun, a new star, nova, flaring into view, it was interpreted as the heavens actively sending a message. Often that message was thought to be significant, a portent of change, a warning, an omen of great events. The sky was not a passive backdrop. It was a communicating, living entity. Consider how deeply that idea runs in our cultures. Even in the modern world, we still speak of lucky stars. People wish upon a star for good fortune, as if that star could listen and perhaps grant the request. It's a gentle superstition, but a persistent one. We tell our children to wish on the first star of the evening. Many of us, even if we're not religious or superstitious, have had that quiet moment where we look up at a particularly bright star or a fleeting shooting star and think, maybe, just maybe, something out there hears me. It's as if, despite all our scientific progress, we've inherited this subtle, hopeful sense that the stars could be benevolent watchers, like nightlights in the sky, keeping the darkness from being absolute. Now, of course, science has a different story about what stars are, one that began only a few centuries ago and has grown more detailed with time. We know now that stars are not literally gods, or eyes, or lanterns hung by cords from a solid sky. As the Venda people imagined, with stars dangling by strings from the heavens, 3. We know they are immense spheres of plasma, unimaginably hot and bright, powered by nuclear fusion in their cores. The Sun, our star, is a medium-sized star, and it's a giant blazing ball of hydrogen and helium gas fusing into heavier elements, pouring out energy. It's massive enough that about 1,000,000 Earths could fit inside it. The other stars we see at night are suns too, some bigger, some smaller, at vast distances. They look tiny only because they are so very far away. The nearest star beyond our solar system, Proxima Centauri, is over 4 light years away, meaning the light from it takes more than 4 years to get here. Many stars visible to the eye are hundreds of light years away, their light traveling across centuries to reach our retinas. When you stare at a star, you are seeing a beacon from the deep past, a message that left that star long before you were born. The star might not even exist anymore as you see it. Some may have exploded or faded, but their last rays of light are only just arriving on Earth now, like an echo from a vanished world. Stars are born, live, and die on timescales that dwarf our human experience. They emerge out of great dark clouds of gas and dust in space, stellar nurseries where hundreds of new stars can form together. If you've ever seen a picture of the pillars of creation, those towering columns of gas photographed by Hubble, you've seen a birthplace of stars. It's a process that takes millions of years, gravity gently pulling material together until, at the core of a forming star, the pressure and heat ignite fusion. And whoosh, a star is born, shining with its own light. For small stars, life might be tens of billions of years. For very large stars which burn hotter and faster, life might be only a few million years before they exhaust their fuel. But no star shines forever. In their final stages, stars undergo transformations that can be violent or beautiful or both. Some swell into red giants. Our sun will do this, swelling so large it could engulf the inner planets. Don't worry, that's billions of years away. Some stars, much more massive, die in spectacular explosions called supernovae, where they briefly outshine entire galaxies and then scatter their guts into space. Other stars gently shed their outer layers, creating glowing shells known as planetary nebulae, a final, fragile display of light and color, like a cosmic flower blooming at the end. Why am I telling you all this? Because in the scientific view, stars are not watching us with eyes or consciously guiding our fate, yet they are intimately connected to us in ways even more profound than the ancients imagined. Those supernova explosions I mentioned, they are not just fireworks. When a star explodes, it forges heavy elements and scatters them across space. Every precious metal, every element heavier than iron, is mostly formed in these stellar cataclysms. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, those atoms were born in a star that died billions of years before our Earth even formed. Think about that for a moment. Long before our sun lit up, there was another star here, well, here in the general region of our galaxy. A star that lived its life, created new elements in its fiery heart, and then died, blowing those elements out into the galaxy. That star's remnants eventually coalesced into new stars and planets, one of which was our solar system, our Earth. The very matter of your body is recycled stardust. As one astronomer famously put it, "We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." Pause on that thought. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. It's not just poetry. It's quite literally true that without stars, we wouldn't exist. And without us or other conscious beings, the universe would have no eyes to look inward and appreciate itself. Carl Sagan, who said those words, meant that because we are conscious and we are made of the universe, when we examine the universe, for instance, by stargazing or by doing science, it's actually the universe examining itself through these small conscious parts that we represent. It's a remarkable idea that maybe we are the way the stars watch anything at all. We'll come back to that later because it's one path to answering our big question. But first, let's stick with the scientific perspective a little longer in a straightforward way to ground ourselves. So, scientifically speaking, stars are huge, hot, inhuman spheres following the laws of physics. They are born and die, they shine and explode, but they do it all without any purpose that we can discern. They're not alive, not in the sense we usually mean. Life, as far as we know, requires things like metabolism, reproduction, responsiveness to stimuli, and perhaps most crucially, consciousness as we experience it requires a brain or at least some network of processing information. Stars don't have brains, they don't have nerves, they don't reproduce biologically, though new stars form from the materials of old ones, which is a kind of cosmic rebirth, but not intentional on the star's part. If a star reacts to something, say if a passing gravitational field disturbs it, or if it starts to run low on fuel and swells up, it's not deciding to do that. It's just following physics, mindlessly. At least that's the conventional view. It's a view that has served astronomy and physics well. We can predict eclipses, we can understand star life cycles, we can even detect planets around distant stars by tiny dips in starlight, all without invoking any notion of consciousness. In this framework, stars are essentially natural machines. Beautiful, yes. Awe-inspiring, absolutely. But unconscious. The universe, in this view, is largely cold and indifferent to us. The stars shine on whether we live or die, care not if we look up or don't. This can be a bit of a lonely thought. Many scientists themselves have felt that loneliness. There's even a term, the cosmic indifference, used to describe how the more we learn about the vast scales of the universe, the more it seems that our little human concerns are irrelevant to it. The stars were here long before us and will be here long after we're gone, and they'll do their stellar things regardless of kings or poets or dreams or tragedies playing out on Earth. And yet, it's here, in this space between knowledge and feeling, between what we know and what we sense, that the glimmer of our question lies. Because while the scientific worldview tells us one thing, our intuition and our longing sometimes tell us something else. We know the stars aren't literally gods or eyes now, but on a silent night when you gaze upward, you might still feel a presence, a kind of timeless watchfulness in the sky. Is that purely our imagination, an echo of ancestral myths in our brains? Perhaps, likely even, but let's not dismiss it so quickly. What if that intuitive feeling points to something real, even if we interpret it poetically? What if the universe has a kind of awareness, just not an awareness like ours? Not something that began when humans arrived, but something woven into it from the beginning. This line of thought takes us into philosophical and speculative territory, but it's worth treading slowly. Some modern thinkers, including a few scientists and philosophers, entertain an idea called panpsychism, the notion that consciousness, or at least a rudimentary proto-consciousness, might be a fundamental feature of the universe, present even in things we consider inanimate. It's a controversial idea, often criticized, yet it persists because the truth is we don't fully understand what consciousness is or how it arises. We know our brains give rise to our minds somehow, but the exact mechanism remains mysterious. Panpsychism says maybe consciousness isn't produced from nothing by complex brains. Maybe instead, brains amplify or collect something that was already pervasively present in the building blocks of reality. If that's the case, a big if, then consciousness in some tiny, nascent form might exist in a single atom or a particle. And as structures become more complex, like a molecule, a cell, a plant, an animal, a human, the degree or richness of consciousness increases. It's like saying consciousness is on a spectrum from almost zero in a rock, to faint glimmers in simpler life, to vivid self-awareness in humans and possibly beyond us. If one takes this idea seriously, even just as a what-if, then asking if stars are conscious becomes not a ridiculous question, but a fascinating one. Stars are complex physical systems. They are not just simple balls of gas, they have internal structures, layers, feedback mechanisms. Our sun, for example, has a core that fuses hydrogen, a radiative zone where energy slowly diffuses outward, a convective zone where giant currents of plasma circulate like boiling water, and a dynamic atmosphere with magnetic fields snapping and twisting. It has cycles. The sun goes through an approximately 11-year sunspot cycle, almost like a heartbeat or a breathing rhythm. During solar maximum, it's more active with sunspots and solar flares. During solar minimum, it's calmer. the sun also emits the solar wind, a stream of charged particles that flows outwards and touches all the planets, a kind of extended presence of the sun felt throughout the solar system. It's not so crazy to draw analogies. The magnetic loops and plasma flows could be seen as a star's nervous system of sorts, carrying energy and information from one region to another. The way a star maintains equilibrium, balancing the outward pressure of fusion against the inward pull of gravity, is a bit like a form of homeostasis, a self-regulation to stay alive, stable and shining. If the fusion rate speeds up too much, the star slightly expands, which cools it and slows the fusion. If fusion slows, the star contracts under gravity, heating the core and boosting fusion. It's as if the star knows to keep itself in balance, though of course it's just physics doing its thing. But it seems purposeful. As one scientist remarked about Earth's self-regulating systems, it's as if the Earth notices when something goes out of balance and gently nudges it back. Wow. Stars, too, have a remarkable stability over long periods, at least those like the sun. They don't erratically flare up and die out in a million years. They burn steadily for billions. In that steadiness, we find the possibility for life to exist on orbiting planets. Now let's introduce a voice from the realm of science who actually dared to ask in a serious way something like our question. In 2017, a physicist named Gregory Matloff published a paper proposing that stars might, at least in principle, have a very basic kind of will or consciousness. This wasn't in a mainstream journal, but in a more speculative publication, yet it got people talking. Matloff pointed out a puzzling observation. Cooler, smaller stars like our sun seem to orbit the center of our galaxy slightly faster than hotter, larger stars. There's a known phenomenon called Parenago's discontinuity in stellar astronomy where this difference in motion is seen. Some attribute it to young versus old star populations or interactions with gas clouds. But Matloff whimsically suggested another possibility. Perhaps these cooler stars somehow propel themselves just a tiny bit by emitting jets of material in a preferred direction, effectively adjusting their orbits. In other words, he speculated that maybe the stars are choosing their paths, even if only in a very rudimentary way. Matloff's idea was that if a star had even a shred of consciousness or something analogous to pain, pleasure, it might prefer a certain galactic environment and subtly move itself there. Fantastic? Yes. Testable? He thought possibly. With more data from missions like the Gaia Space Telescope which map star motions. His hypothesis hasn't gained wide traction and it remains on the fringe of science. But it's fascinating because it shows that the question of cosmic consciousness isn't just a mystical musing, it's something even hard-nosed scientists occasionally consider, however tentatively, TNES 11. Matloff wasn't the first. Even the famous physicist Roger Penrose, along with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, speculated on consciousness in contexts far beyond brains. In one discussion of their quantum theory of mind, Penrose mused that perhaps certain quantum processes in extremely dense objects like neutron stars, the remnants of supernovae, could generate something like consciousness. 12. Neutron stars are mind-boggling. A star with the mass of our sun crushed into a sphere only a few miles across, so dense that a teaspoon of its material would weigh billions of tons. They have ultra-strong magnetic fields and spin at incredible speeds. Penrose's idea wasn't that a neutron star is thinking thoughts about poetry and breakfast, but he was pointing out that if consciousness is tied to quantum processes, a big if of his theory, then maybe such processes could occur in environments beyond the brain. It's a far-out thought experiment, but one coming from a highly respected scientist. And beyond individual scientists, there's a broader idea cropping up in various forms, that perhaps the universe itself is in some sense conscious. This doesn't mean conscious in a human way, the universe isn't a person, but that consciousness might be an intrinsic property, like electrical charge or gravity, that scales up with complexity. It leads to questions like, could a galaxy be conscious in the way that a huge collection of neurons, a brain, is conscious? After all, galaxies and neural networks have been compared in structure. Both have nodes and filaments, both transmit signals, stars and gas in one, electrical pulses in the other. 13. It could be mere coincidence, or a hint of something? We don't know. We have to be careful not to jump to conclusions just because something looks similar on a whiteboard or image. But it gives pause, doesn't it? The visible universe contains billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, all interacting through gravity and perhaps other forces we don't fully understand, like dark matter, dark energy. Is it utterly outlandish to imagine that on those grand scales there could be phenomena as hard for us to grasp as our human minds are for, say, an ant to grasp? We should be honest. Most scientists would say, yes, it is pretty outlandish. The burden of proof is on anyone claiming stars or galaxies are conscious. And so far, there's no evidence that they are. A star has never done anything that unmistakably signals mind at work. We don't see stars suddenly changing their behavior in a way that screams agency or choice beyond natural causes. As of now, conscious star is not a scientific conclusion. It's a speculation, a what if. And many would argue that by stretching the concept of consciousness so far, you risk making it meaningless. If everything is conscious, then you have to explain why a rock seems so different from a brain. The counter to panpsychism is that it doesn't really solve the mystery of mind. It just says, mind is everywhere, which raises as many questions as it answers. That said, for the purpose of our slow, dreamy exploration tonight, we don't need to prove anything. We're simply opening up to possibility. Not declaring that stars are watching us, but asking what if. Just holding that question lightly, like you might hold a smooth pebble in your hand while lying on your back stargazing, feeling its weight but not squeezing too hard. The goal isn't to crush an answer out of it, it's to feel the contours of the question itself, to see where it leads our thoughts and feelings. So let's play a little. Let's imagine, hypothetically, that stars could be aware in some way. It might be a type of awareness completely unlike ours. Maybe no thoughts, no language, just a kind of state of being that includes a faint sense of self or surroundings. What would it be like to be a star? Try to picture it. Your body is a sphere of incandescent plasma 1,000,000 kilometers across. You have no solid form. You are a roaring ball of fire, yet held together in a near-perfect sphere by your own gravity. You are born from a cloud of dust and gas that collapses. As a newborn star, you might be part of a cluster, siblings forming together in a stellar nursery. Over millions of years, you drift apart from your siblings. Perhaps you have a family of planets that condense in orbit around you. They are tiny compared to you, but you are tied to them. They depend on your light and warmth, and their gravitational tugs give you feedback too, a subtle rocking or wobble as they dance around you. You feel them in that sense. If you were the sun, you might feel Jupiter tugging you gently in a 12-year rhythm, or little Earth pulling just a bit. These tugs aren't thoughts, but if you were a conscious star, maybe they'd be like physical sensations, like how we feel the pull of muscles or the beating of our heart. Your view of time would be utterly different from a human's. Our human lives are a handful of decades. A minute can feel long to us. But you, as a star, measure time in eons. 1,000,000 years is a fleeting chapter of your youth. You burn for billions. You don't notice the passing of human civilizations at all. They're like mayflies flitting around you for an afternoon. If you have something like thoughts, maybe one thought unfolds over centuries. Perhaps you contemplate the gradual drift of your neighboring stars in the galaxy the way we might contemplate clouds moving across the sky. You communicate with other stars, not by words, but perhaps by light and gravity. A nearby star comes a little closer. Maybe you exchange some particles, cosmic rays, or maybe a binary companion, if you have one, dances with you in a tight orbit. 2 stars locked in a graceful spiral, your version of companionship. Think of the sun. For about 4.5 billion years, it has shone on Earth. It has quietly watched the planets, in a manner of speaking, turning and orbiting. Every 11 years or so, it grows restless with sunspots and flares, then it calms. It breathes out the solar wind that washes over Earth and the other planets, sometimes sparkling in our skies as auroras. If the sun were conscious, perhaps it would notice that little third planet covered in blue and green has changed over time. Once, Earth was just volcanic rock and ocean and bacteria. Now it's teeming with weird life, including life that can think and build. And curiously, that life has started to send signals back to the stars. In the last century, Earth has been leaking radio waves. Our radio transmissions, TV broadcasts, radar pings, they've been radiating out from Earth at the speed of light. They are incredibly faint by the time they reach even the nearest stars, but in principle, if there were a sufficiently sensitive receiver or an intelligent being out there around, say, Alpha Centauri, they could now be aware of some interesting electromagnetic chatter coming from our direction. It is often said that our first radio signals are now dozens of light years away, making a bubble of Earth awareness expanding through the galaxy. If stars were conscious and had something like senses, perhaps one sense would be attuned to electromagnetic fields. They are made of plasma, after all, which dances with magnetic and electric fields. Could a star sense a modulated radio wave from a far-off planet? Realistically, our signals are far too weak to disturb a star. But I'm imagining in a poetic sense, maybe it's like how we can't literally hear a bird's tiny heartbeat from a distance, but we can hear its song. Perhaps the collective song of human technology, faint as it is tickling the universe's ears now. What's certain is that the stars have witnessed the Earth in a literal way. Starlight has constantly bathed this planet from all directions. The light of distant stars falls on the night side of Earth, painting the darkness with a faint glow that has guided migrating animals and inspired humans to exploration. It's quite poetic. We often use the light of consciousness as a metaphor for awareness, and here we have these literal lights in the sky that have illuminated our world, perhaps making us feel less alone in the dark. It's not that the stars deliberately shine for us. They shine for no one or for everyone, just by their nature. But for those open to it, that starlight can feel like a gentle gaze. If you've ever camped under a clear sky far from city lights, you know the sensation. There's the hushed crackling of your fire, maybe the rustle of a breeze, and above you an infinity of stars. You feel observed in a way, not in a threatening sense, but in a profound one. You feel tiny, but also oddly comforted. The sky is vast, yet it's not empty. The stars give it depth, character. It's like being in a great cathedral at night. You might feel a presence or simply the weight of space and time around you. I remember one such night vividly, and perhaps you do too, lying on the ground, with the Milky Way arching overhead so thick with stars that it looked like a cloud, and thinking, so this is what our ancestors saw every night. In that moment, I understood how naturally one could imagine that the sky has eyes. With thousands of tiny lights looking down, how could one not feel watched in some way? Not watched with malice, but seen, recognized. Even in modern times, events like eclipses can evoke an almost primal sense of a conscious cosmos. A total solar eclipse, when the moon covers the sun, is a purely celestial mechanics event, completely predictable and indifferent. Yet the experience is overwhelming. Day turns to eerie twilight. Stars come out in midday, animals go quiet, and the sun's corona, its hot outer atmosphere, becomes visible, wreathing the dark lunar silhouette like a halo. Many who witness a total eclipse describe it in spiritual or mystical terms. One writer described feeling as though during that brief darkness, a living being, the sun, revealed itself and looked back at him. Transfixed by the sight of the sun's corona, normally invisible, he felt that he was not just a human watching the sun, but somehow the sun was also regarding him. It's an emotional impression, not a scientific observation, but it's powerful. It suggests that under extraordinary circumstances, our minds naturally slip into perceiving a kind of mutual awareness with the cosmos. We drop our intellectual guard for a moment and simply feel connected, as if in the grand quiet of that shadow, two consciousnesses met, one human and fleeting, one solar and ancient. Let's linger there for a moment. What might it mean for a star to be aware of us? Awareness can mean many things. For us, it's wrapped up in neurons and sense organs and responses. For a hypothetical conscious star, maybe awareness would be something like a subtle responsiveness to the environment. Perhaps a star might feel the gravitational tug of another star that passes nearby during its orbit around the galaxy, in a way analogous to how we feel the presence of a person when they come close. Perhaps stars might be dimly aware of the collective gravitational field of the galaxy itself, like a vast sea in which they all swim and whose currents they can sense. If stars had awareness, maybe it would be a collective one, each star a cell in a greater mind that is the galaxy. This is far out speculation, but intriguing. Some scientists like to point out that the pattern of galaxies in the cosmic web, large-scale structure of the universe, looks a bit like the pattern of neurons in a brain. It might just be coincidence born of similar mathematics, nodes connected by filaments, but it makes you wonder if our brains in the cosmos follow some fractal pattern of organization. Could it be that the universe has its own kind of neural network with galaxies as neurons and threads of dark matter or energy as axons linking them? If so, what's being communicated across those links? Some would poetically say the universe is thinking, though it's a thought on timescales and in forms we cannot imagine. Bringing this back to Earth, if the stars are watching us, maybe it's not the individual stars like our sun, but the universe as a whole watching through the stars as its eyes. In some cultures, the sky itself was seen as a deity or a conscious entity. For example, many indigenous Australian stories personify the sky, and the stars are part of a great narrative canvas where ancestor spirits live and observe the living. The Greek myth of Uranus had the sky as a god who fathered many other gods with Earth, Gaia. In that sense, the ancients might have been hinting at a holistic idea. Our Earth and sky together produce life, and the sky, the cosmos, is an active participant, not just an empty dome. It's fascinating to see how ancient intuition sometimes echoes modern scientific truths in metaphorical ways. The ancients said we are children of the sky, and science now tells us we literally are children of stardust. The ancients said the stars influence us, and indeed the heavy elements from ancient star explosions influence our very biology, and the cycles of the sun influence our climate and the growth of plants and the behavior of animals. The ancients imagined a cosmic mind, and today some scientists seriously consider that consciousness might not be exclusive to brains. Could it be that our predecessors were sensing something real, but expressing it in the only language they had, that of myth and personification? As one writer put it, perhaps when they gave the earth or the stars a face and a personality, they were picking up on something real, even if they didn't have the science to prove it. 15. Let's parse what watching us could mean in a more abstract sense. To watch implies to observe, to be aware of. We've already touched on the possibility of cosmic awareness, but there's another angle. The idea that reality might require observers. There's a principle in quantum physics sometimes paraphrased as, no phenomenon is a phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon, stemming from experiments where particles don't seem to have definite states until measured. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, very speculative ones, mind you, suggest that consciousness and the material world are entangled in fundamental ways. The physicist John Wheeler even proposed a concept he called the participatory universe, meaning that by observing the universe, we actually help bring it into being in some way. 17. Under such thinking, you could whimsically say that when we look at the stars, we are doing something crucial. We are completing a loop, the universe experiencing itself. This doesn't exactly mean the stars watch us, but it means stars and minds are complementary. One without the other is incomplete. The cosmos produced conscious life, and conscious life in turn gives meaning to the cosmos by observing it. Now, that's a heavy, heady concept. Let's not get too lost in it. Instead, consider one simple, undeniable truth. The stars have shaped us, not just physically through atoms, but psychologically and culturally through inspiration. The stars have watched over human affairs in the sense that they have always been there as we evolved, as we built societies. They were the first calendar and compass. They silently witnessed every night journey of migrating tribes, every ritual done under the night sky, every lover's secret rendezvous illuminated by starlight, every wanderer who ever looked up seeking guidance or meaning. In that poetic sense, the stars have been watching the whole parade of human history. The photons that bounced off the pyramids under ancient Egyptian skies went out into space, some escaping Earth entirely, carrying a tiny image of those pyramids to the stars. The radio waves of the first television broadcasts of humanity stepping onto the moon in 1969 have now traveled over 50 light years into space. They have washed over dozens of stars in that radius. If anyone or anything out there had the right receiver, they could know that humans achieved that leap. We have, unintentionally, announced ourselves to the cosmos simply by existing and radiating energy. So in a way, the stars could know of us through our own emissions. For instance, about 8.6 light years away is Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. Theoretically, any Sirius planetary system is now receiving the radio buzz we sent out in the early 2010s. Turn that around. The Earth is bathed in the natural radio waves of the sun and other cosmic sources all the time. Even if we don't decode it as information, Earth is in constant two-way exchange with the sky. Light in, light out, gravity in, gravity out. It's an ongoing conversation of physics. Where does that leave our question? If we define watching broadly enough, we could say yes, the stars watch us by interacting with us. The sun watches every move we make in the sense that without sunlight, we wouldn't move at all. It's always illuminating and affecting everything we do. And the distant stars, by providing that background of fixed lights, have watched over the development of our navigation, our science. Remember, astronomy was perhaps the first science, mapping the stars, trying to predict their motions. They've watched in that they've been constant while we changed, serving as reference points. The word observe can mean both to watch and to abide by, like observing a rule. Humans have observed the stars, watched them, and also observed by the stars lived according to their cycles. But let's narrow it back to consciousness and awareness. Suppose, just suppose, that somewhere out there in the universe, maybe in a civilization far older than ours, or in some form of life we can't conceive, the idea of stars having consciousness is not so far-fetched. It might be that advanced beings could create conscious machines the size of stars, or even transform themselves into star-like entities. These are science fiction ideas, of course. Or perhaps life doesn't only form on planets, maybe inside the core of a star or on the event horizon of a black hole. Exotic forms of self-organization could occur. It sounds like fantasy, but we can't absolutely rule out all possibilities in this vast cosmos. So there could be things in the universe as superior to us in awareness as we are to bacteria. If that's true, then to those entities we might be as unnoticed as ants are to us, or maybe they watch us with mild curiosity like we watch birds building a nest, not interfering, just observing nature doing its thing. Some have even whimsically speculated that the apparent quietness of the universe, the great silence, the fact that we haven't heard from aliens yet, might be because we're essentially infants in a cosmic nursery being gently watched by very old intelligences until we mature. That's more in the realm of metaphysical storytelling than science, but it resonates with that yearning for not being alone. In a softer vein, think of the archetype of the watcher. In many mythologies and religious traditions, there are references to watchers, beings whose role is to observe, record, or guard. In biblical apocrypha, the watchers were a class of angels set to watch over humanity. Some legends say they fell in love with human women and caused trouble, but that's another story. In many myths, the sun and moon are portrayed as eyes of gods. For example, in Egyptian myth, the sun was the eye of Ra. If you go to the Andean Altiplano, some indigenous people will point to the stars and say, that's the eyes of Pachamama, Mother Earth, looking at us. There's something universal about this idea that we are seen from above. Perhaps it emerged because it comforted people. The idea that even if other humans don't see your struggles, the heavens do, so justice or meaning exists. Perhaps it was also a way to scare people into good behavior, the way we tell children that Santa Claus or some deity sees their actions. But beyond those social reasons, maybe it also emerges from a subtle truth, that we are part of a larger whole that in some way monitors and responds to our actions. For example, consider the environment. If we pollute and alter Earth's atmosphere, the sun and climate will respond with changes. Not because the sun is angry at us, but it might feel like punishment when climate disasters strike. Earth's systems and the cosmic environment are intertwined with our existence. So yes, when we dig up too much carbon and burn it, one could say the sky is watching and reacting by trapping more heat and stirring fiercer storms. Not conscious retribution, but cause and effect in a grander system where we're not outside the gaze of consequences. Now I realize I'm anthropomorphizing a lot, turning natural processes into watching and reacting as if deliberate. This is just a narrative technique to explore the concept. We should always keep in mind the difference between a helpful metaphor and literal fact. There's no evidence a star has intentions or feelings, but by exploring these metaphors, sometimes we stumble on new ways of appreciating reality. Even if stars aren't conscious, thinking of them as such for a while can open us to a kind of respect and kinship with the cosmos that a dry, factual view might not provide. It's similar to how one might talk to a houseplant or pet. Even if you know it doesn't understand your words, the act of doing so still fosters a relationship and attentiveness. Similarly, if we imagine the stars to be watching, perhaps we become a bit more mindful of our place in the universe, our actions under the cosmic camera, if you will. It's like performing on a stage. When you know someone's watching, you act differently. If humanity truly felt the eyes of the universe on it, perhaps we'd take better care of our beautiful planet, treat each other with more compassion, unify rather than divide. Because if the cosmos is watching, what story would we want it to see in us? Would we want it to see violence and pettiness, or creativity and love? Let's pivot gently here, because I can sense the night deepening and our thoughts getting more abstract and dreamy. We've talked about myths and science and speculation. Let's ask, why does this question even matter? Suppose the stars are watching us, or equivalently, suppose the universe has some consciousness. How would that change our experience? For one, we might feel less alone. A lot of modern existential angst comes from the feeling that we're tiny specks in an impersonal cosmos. But if the cosmos in some way knows us, either by containing us as part of itself or by literally being aware of us, then we aren't alone at all. We're part of a conversation, even if that conversation is one-sided or beyond our comprehension. It would be like living in a forest, knowing the forest is alive and aware of you, versus thinking you're in a dead, mechanical environment. The former invites respect, gratitude, maybe even reverence. The latter can feel isolating. Perhaps that's one reason many people are drawn to the idea of a conscious universe, whether they phrase it in scientific terms or spiritual ones. It gives a sense of belonging. On the flip side, some might find the idea unnerving. If the stars are watching, where is the privacy? Under such a cosmic gaze, maybe all our secrets are laid bare to the firmament. But I suspect if something so vast is aware, it would not concern itself with the trivial. It would watch in the way a wise elder might watch children play, with gentle interest, intervening only if absolutely needed, otherwise letting us learn our lessons. There's actually an old concept in philosophy and theology known as the deistic view of God, that God might be like the great architect who created the universe and its laws and then doesn't interfere, just observes. Some Enlightenment thinkers held that view to reconcile a creator with the lack of obvious divine intervention. If one were to modernize that, one could imagine the universe's consciousness as that deistic watcher, not tweaking things constantly, just being present as the context within which we evolve. At this point, maybe we should concede that as fun as it is to imagine, we really don't know if the stars have any awareness of us. All evidence suggests they do not, at least not in any way we can detect or define. It could very well be that the haunting feeling of being watched by the stars is purely a projection of the human mind, a mind that evolved to detect eyes and faces for survival reasons, and thus sometimes sees eyes in patterns of lights by psychological bias. Our brains are pattern finders, and sometimes they overshoot, finding agency where there is none. Just as we might see a face in the moon, the man in the moon, when it's really just craters, we might sense awareness in the stars when it's really just nuclear furnaces shining away. Science would incline to say that's the most parsimonious explanation. We feel watched by the stars because of our psychology and long cultural heritage of animism and myth. It's a beautiful illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. And yet, here comes that gentle, and yet, again, it does not feel like an illusion when you're out there under the sky. The feelings are real. The impacts on human culture are real. Sometimes the subjective truth carries its own kind of weight, even if it's not objectively measurable. For instance, love is not something you can measure with instruments easily. but its reality in our experience is profound. Likewise, the sense of communion with the cosmos is a real experience many people have. It's part of being human, perhaps. We look up in wonder, and something in us answers as if we received a signal. That answering might just be our deeper self, or it might be something truly outside us resonating we don't know. What we do know is that we're a part of this universe. We're made of the same stuff as the stars. We obey the same natural laws. We emerged from this cosmic system and are wholly embedded in it. In that sense, you could say the universe has already achieved a kind of self-awareness through us. We are bits of stardust that can ponder stardust. We are atoms that assemble to talk about atoms. That is astonishing. Whether or not the entire universe or the stars individually have their own inner life, in us the universe certainly has an inner life, because our inner lives come from it. So maybe the stars watch us by giving rise to us, and thus indirectly becoming us. We look at the stars, and the stars through us look back at themselves. A reciprocal gaze through the mirror of life. There's a lovely symmetry there. Our ancient ancestors said we came from the stars and returned to the stars. And science agrees. The carbon in our bodies came from stars. And when we die, our atoms will eventually disperse and maybe be incorporated into new stars or planets. We are a temporary configuration of cosmic material that also happens to be aware. For a brief moment on the scale of cosmic time, the matter that was once just floating in space forms a person that can think and feel and observe. That person looks at the stars and feels connected. And maybe that's the whole point, or a point to connect. Even if the connection is one way, the feeling of connection enriches the universe because it births art, curiosity, empathy. Let's zoom out and consider a starry perspective on humanity. Imagine perhaps an ethereal consciousness associated with our galaxy, a galactic mind watching what's happening on a tiny blue dot, our Earth, orbiting one of its 200 billion stars, our sun. Maybe it has seen this before elsewhere. Life blooming on some world, growing curious, reaching out. Maybe from that vantage, human struggles and triumphs are like the scurrying of ants, yes, but also like the flourishing of a garden at a certain time in the cosmic season. Perhaps such a galactic awareness would quietly encourage growth of complexity and understanding, because that's part of the galaxy's own journey toward self-awareness. If a galaxy were conscious, every new intelligent species might be like a new neuron firing in its vast brain. Humanity could be one of those sparks, and just as we feel a certain care for the cells in our body that keep us healthy, a galactic mind might care in some abstract way about its living parts. It's a grand idea bordering on science fiction theology, but it's a peaceful one. The sense that the universe is rooting for life, for intelligence, for connectivity. Some scientists have indeed argued that the laws of the universe seem fine-tuned for complexity to arise. If certain physical constants were even slightly different, stars might not form, or atoms might not stick together to make chemistry possible. This is known as the anthropic principle. The universe must have parameters that allow observers to exist, otherwise we wouldn't be here to observe it. One could interpret that in a mundane way. We see a universe that permits life because only in such a universe could life exist to see anything, a tautology. Or one could whimsically see it as evidence that the universe wants observers, wants life, maybe because it enjoys being seen. That's of course teleological, assigning purpose to the universe when we really don't know if there is one. But it's a comforting narrative, that the stars made us because they too desired a way to be known and appreciated. We often think we are the ones who appreciate the stars, but perhaps the stars, through creating us, set up a situation to appreciate themselves. Even if that's not literally true, think of how we treat our creations. We create art or stories often as a way to express ourselves and also to see ourselves from outside. The universe, via natural processes, created creatures capable of art and science and spirituality. Through us, new eyes exist that can marvel at the cosmos. In effect, the universe has more opportunities to be marveled at, and maybe that's something inherently good. If you were a star, shining alone for eons, wouldn't it be kind of lonely if no one ever saw your light? There's a sweetness in thinking that our act of looking up fulfills something, giving the stars company, acknowledging their radiance. In the Bible, there's a line that says, "The stars sing or declare the glory of creation." If you prefer a secular view, you could say stars shine, and part of their purpose, if any, is to eventually become life and people who then appreciate starlight. A feedback loop. Stars make life. Life admires stars, and perhaps that admiration feeds into the cosmic story in ways unseen. It's time for a gentle reality check. We don't truly know of any consciousness out there beyond Earth, and even on Earth, the only consciousness we deeply know is our own. We infer animals, and others are conscious by analogy. For all we know, the universe is indifferent, and we just project meaning onto it. If that's the case, does it diminish the majesty of what is? Not really. The stars don't need minds to be magnificent. The sheer scale and beauty of them can be enough to inspire us to be better, to feel awe and humility. Sometimes I think the silence of the stars, their steady gaze that offers no obvious reply, is what prompts us to reflect and find the answers within ourselves. In other words, even if the stars are not literally watching or caring, the effect of believing or imagining that they do has often been to make humans more thoughtful, kinder, more united under the shared sky. When we remember that every person lives under the same stars, it can foster a sense of global kinship. We realize that boundaries and conflicts are small compared to the cosmic stage we share. It's as if the stars silently remind us of perspective. There's a wonderful tradition in some First Nations communities in North America that when a person is troubled, they are told to go outside at night and give your troubles to the stars. You look up, you acknowledge that those shining lights have seen countless ages and survived all things, and you sort of mentally hand over your burden to that vastness. The idea is that the stars can bear what we cannot, simply because they are so enduring and distant. Whether or not one believes they truly take on anything, the act can be relieving. It's like confiding in a wise, silent friend who won't judge, but also won't respond, just hold the space for you. In that sense, the stars watching is therapeutic. Many a person has looked up in grief or loneliness and felt a little less alone because the stars were there, constant and twinkling, as if offering silent companionship. All these roles the stars play, guide, calendar, muse, comforter, witness, they happen regardless of whether the star has any inner life. But now, for a final imaginative exercise, let's pretend that in some ineffable way they do have an inner life. What would the star feel when, say, life arises on one of its planets for the first time? Could the star be proud, like a parent seeing a child take first steps? When that life looks up and recognizes the star as their son and begins to praise it or depend on it, is there some reciprocal satisfaction? When an intelligent species on a planet starts sending spacecraft out, maybe even a probe that one day plunges into the star's atmosphere, as we have done with our Parker Solar Probe entering the outer reaches of the sun's corona, does the star register that like we would register a touch? The Parker probe touched the sun in 2021, a human-made object brushing against our star's atmosphere. It was a scientific milestone. If the sun had feelings, perhaps it was ticklish or curious about that little visitor from its third planet. This is fanciful, of course, but it puts a different spin on our relationship. We think of exploring space as humans going out to touch the stars, but perhaps it could be seen as stars extending their influence to touch us. There's also the notion of empathy on a cosmic scale. Our sun and the billions of other stars all share similar life cycles. They know birth and death in their way. The elements forged in a star are later parts of new stars and planets, stardust reincarnated. We humans, as bits of stardust, also experience cycles of life and death. We might find the stars beautiful, but a star might find us ephemeral and interesting, like seeing a mayfly that lives only a day. Maybe it takes joy in the quick sparkle of conscious life that flares on a planet and then fades because in its slow perception, that's like a dazzling firework. Again, all metaphor, but metaphors help bridge understanding. At this point, it might feel like we've wandered very far into fantasy. That's okay, the night is made for such gentle fantasies. We're not constructing a rigorous theory here, we're sharing a dreamy exploration. And maybe by stretching our imagination so far, when we let it relax back, it will land somewhere insightful. Perhaps it lands here. Whether or not the stars have consciousness, they undeniably provoke consciousness in us. They make us ask big questions. They make us aware of ourselves in a new light. Look at what we've done in just the last hour or two of musing. We've reflected on myth, science, life, death, meaning, loneliness, connection. The stars are like a mirror that shows us the outline of our own minds. In striving to personify them, we actually reveal a lot about what we humans yearn for. We want to not be alone. We want validation that our existence matters in the grand scheme. We want to believe that beauty has a purpose, that the lights in the sky are not just indifferent thermonuclear reactors, but part of a story that includes us. We want the universe to be home, not a cold void. Here's a gentle thought. Maybe the answer to, are the stars watching us, is every way you look at it, we are connected. If we need the stars to watch us in order to feel connected, then in a sense they do, through all the ways we've discussed, mythologically, materially, metaphorically. They watch us through the legacy of the elements they bestowed on us, through the unceasing shower of photons that fall on Earth and sustain our food chains and warm our days. They watch us by giving us something to strive for, to study. Without the stars, would we even have science or an urge to explore beyond our immediate needs? Probably not. It was the mystery of those lights that drove early astronomy. In a way, you could say the stars guided us to knowledge, which is a kind of teaching, which implies a kind of caring if you choose to see it that way. Before we drift toward closing this little odyssey of thought, let's consider one more lovely notion from literature and science combined: the music of the spheres. This ancient idea posited that the celestial bodies, sun, moon, planets, stars, produce a sort of music, not audible, but a harmony by their movements, and that perhaps the soul can tune into that. While not literally true, there is a faint music out there, radio emissions from stars and pulsars that we can convert to sound, gravitational waves from colliding stars ringing space-time itself. In 2017, we detected gravitational waves from the neutron stars merging. Some call that the cosmic chirp. When I heard the processed signal, it struck me that the universe does have its subtle songs. It's not much to listen to by our ears, just a brief rising tone, but it carries so much meaning. Two ultra-dense stars spiraled together over eons and finally merged, and in that moment they released a ripple that we picked up across the cosmos. In some poetic way, that was those stars announcing an event, like a birth cry of a new black hole formed from their union. It was them speaking in the medium of gravity, and we just happened to be listening with LIGO detectors tuned for that message. Imagine how many such conversations or announcements are happening all the time beyond our hearing. The universe may be mostly quiet to us, but perhaps that's just because we've only recently plugged in our headphones and only to a couple of channels. As our technology and understanding grow, we may hear more of what the cosmos has to say. Even if it's purely natural processes, we interpret it as information. Perhaps one day we'll detect a clear sign of extraterrestrial intelligence. That would be akin to suddenly realizing someone else is indeed out there, and maybe even looking back. That day, the question of being watched by the stars will take on a whole new complexion, because it might be that someone by a star is watching. But that's for another speculation. Coming back to now, you, here, listening to my voice or reading these words, as the night unfolds, or the day if you're in a different time zone, but let's imagine it's night for the ambience. We've journeyed far in our minds, and it's okay if at times it was hard to follow every thread. The point was never to reach a destination, but to wander slowly, picking up stardust in our thoughts and letting it spark a bit of wonder. You might be feeling relaxed, or perhaps your mind is still churning softly with some of these ideas. There's no rush to resolve anything. The universe has been around for 13.8 billion years, and it likely isn't revealing all its secrets tonight. The stars will continue to shine with or without our permission to anthropomorphize them. What's important is that we allowed ourselves to wonder. In the hustle of daily life, it's easy to lose that, but wonder is a kind of nourishment for the mind and soul. When we wonder, especially about something as grand as the stars, We step out of the narrow confines of our immediate problems and tap into something expansive and timeless. We become, in a way, larger, or at least our perspective does. Our hearts may swell with a quiet joy or awe. That feeling is precious. It's one reason people love stargazing or listening to gentle talks about the universe like this. It reconnects us to that vastness without overwhelming us because we approach it slowly, softly. Now we are approaching the quiet end of our journey tonight. Not an abrupt end with a firm answer, but more like reaching a scenic overlook on a hike where we can sit and rest with all that we've pondered. Around us, the mental landscape is lit dimly by all the stars and ideas we've touched. We can see perhaps the arc of where we traveled. From ancient firesides to modern telescopes, from the inside of atoms to the spans of galaxies, from loneliness to connectedness. It's been a long walk, but a slow and gentle one. If you're tired, that's okay. You don't need to remember everything we talked about. You can let most of it float away like dandelion seeds on the breeze. What remains, I hope, is just a general sense of calm, curiosity, and belonging. A feeling that it's okay not to have all the answers, that it's even kind of beautiful that some questions remain open. They give us space to dream. As we sit here at this figurative overlook, let's gaze up one more time in our mind's eye. See the sky above, full of stars one more time. They glitter patiently. Some flicker with a bit of color. A hint of blue here, a tinge of red there, telling of their temperatures, their ages. Maybe you catch sight of a planet among them shining steadily, perhaps Jupiter or Venus gracing the night. Those aren't stars, but they add their hello to the night's watch. The Milky Way, if it's visible, is a faint band, the combined glow of billions of distant stars. Think of that. For all the individual stars you see, there are so many more you can't see, yet collectively their light still reaches you as a milky haze. You are, in a very literal way, bathed in the light of countless stars every night. Imagine each of those stars as a kind of thought or a memory of the universe. The sky is full of memory, ancient light coming from all directions, telling stories of the past. When you look deep into space with telescopes, you can catch the earliest galaxies forming, see the aftermath of the Big Bang. The stars have been watching the cosmos evolve, and they carry that history in their traveling light. In that sense, the stars witness everything that happens in their vicinity and send it outwards. Some of the starlight hitting Earth today left its star around the time when woolly mammoths roamed, or when the first humans drew on cave walls. Think about that. A star 30,000 light years away, within our galaxy, shining now, could be delivering to us news of something that happened 30,000 years ago near it. We don't decipher those details, but the information is in the light if we had the means to read it fully. All this is to say, the universe is rich with interconnection. We may not decode it all, but it's there. The stars and we are part of one vast system exchanging energy and matter, and perhaps at some level, information. Life itself might be one way the universe trades information and maybe even understanding. So even if the stars aren't watching us with conscious eyes, we are still in conversation with them through our science, our curiosity, and our physical being. We watch the stars, and by doing so, we have learned amazing things. Their compositions, their distances, how the universe began, and that it's expanding still. We've even found planets around other stars, some of which might host life, meaning we are on the cusp of perhaps finding fellow observers among the stars. Meanwhile, the stars watch us in the sense that they affect everything from our climate, the sun's cycles, to our technology, solar flares can knock out satellites, to our imagination, inspiring art and literature. The relationship is dynamic, even if it's not one of equal awareness on both sides. I invite you now to slowly let go of the need to figure out whether the stars are truly watching or not. Instead, trust that you have been watching them and that act itself has changed you a little tonight. Maybe you feel a touch more connected, a bit more at peace with the mystery. Our minds have stretched out across light years, and now it's time to gently retract back to the here and now, to your own breathing and the weight of your body resting. Know that the stars will continue their silent vigil regardless. They'll be there tomorrow night, and the night after, and long after our lives have passed. In a way, that constancy is a promise. a promise that the big picture endures and that our troubles, no matter how immediate, exist within a much larger, forgiving frame. The earth will keep spinning and the stars will keep shining. If you feel sleepy now, that's good. You can allow yourself to drift off whenever you're ready. You don't have to hold any particular thought, not even this question we've explored. You can let the question itself dissolve into the darkness like a faint star fading as you close your eyes. Sometimes not having an answer is a kind of freedom. The question, what if the stars are watching us back, doesn't demand resolution. It only asks to be contemplated and then set free. We've done that. We've acknowledged the wonder of it. And now we can let it go, like releasing a firefly back into the night. In this relaxed, gentle state of mind, perhaps you can imagine yourself lying under a sky full of stars, real or in your mind's eye. Feel the coolness of the air, the solid earth beneath you. Maybe you even feel like one of the ancients, with no noise around except maybe the wind or crickets. The Milky Way stretches above, and a shooting star streaks silently by, an ephemeral visitor. You might make a wish or simply smile, knowing that that meteor was a tiny bit of cosmic dust burning up just for that brief second to create a dash of light for you to see. All these natural wonders play out without human orchestration, yet they sync with our hearts in such a meaningful way. It's almost as if the universe speaks to us in a soft language of beauty, and we respond with gratitude. In that exchange, maybe consciousness meets cosmos. As we come to the end, I want to wish you a sense of peace. The stars, in their serene and distant way, often evoke peace. They've been a symbol of guidance and hope in dark times. If you're holding any worries or stresses, you can imagine them melting away under starlight. There's a lovely old saying, the stars know everything, so we needn't worry. It doesn't mean the stars literally solve our problems, but it suggests that in the grand scheme of things, what will be, will be. The cosmos has it under control, so we can relinquish our anxiety, we can rest. You've carried this curious question with me for quite a while tonight. Thank you for that companionship. Even if we're separated by miles and circumstances, in discussing this, we've been like two people sitting around the same campfire under the same sky, sharing a quiet conversation about life, the universe, and everything. And in this moment, we are part of that ancient lineage of storytellers and wanderers gazing up, asking big questions not to get definitive answers, but to commune with the mystery. There's something deeply human and also, I'd say, deeply universal about that act. Consciousness exploring itself by exploring the cosmos. Whether the cosmos is conscious or not, we are, and that's a gift in itself. To be aware, to be able to feel awe. Our journey is nearly done, and your own personal journey into sleep may be already underway. If you're still awake, that's okay. Take your time. If your eyes are heavy, you can let them close now. Feel your breaths slow and steady, like the gentle rise and fall of a calm ocean. Overhead, the stars, real or imagined, continue to twinkle. They don't demand anything from you. They simply offer their presence. They say, in their own silent way, we are here, you are here, it's all right. Perhaps that's the real message of the star's light reaching us across the void, that across distance and time, connection is still possible. Soon, we'll drift into that quiet space where wakefulness turns to sleep. Think of sleep as a small night within the night, a place where you become like a tiny star yourself. Your mind retreats into its own universe of dreams. In sleep, you let go of the day's identity and melt into a broader being. That's not so different from how a star, at the end of its life, sheds its old form and merges into new forms. Every night, in a way, is a little cosmic cycle for us. Consciousness dissolving and re-emerging. It's a reminder that rest is part of the rhythm of everything. Even stars rest in a sense. They have long, steady periods and then active moments, but overall, they exist in a balance. Now it's time for you to find your balance, your restful state, your place among the stars in the great sleep of tonight. You might find it comforting to imagine as you fall asleep that you're held in a gentle gaze, not a stare, nothing intrusive, just a kind, protective presence. It could be the stars, it could be the universe, it could be the love of those who care about you, it could be your own higher self. Feel that you are seen, known, and safe. You can let your guard down. You can drift. The universe is a big place. You can afford to let your little corner of it go dark for a while and nothing bad will happen. In fact, many good things, like your body repairing itself and your mind integrating memories, will happen in that darkness of sleep. The stars will continue their slow wheel overhead like faithful watchmen. If it's night for you, perhaps you'll even dream of starlight or find yourself flying among stars in your sleep. If it's day, the stars will be there too, just hidden, waiting for when you next need them. There's no need to hurry to the conclusion. We can let the thought gently fade out, like the dimming of a star at dawn. We set out to explore, what if the stars are watching us back? And perhaps we realized that whether or not they are, we have been watching ourselves through this question. The stars, in their silence, prompted reflection. And maybe that's answer enough. The stars give us the space to find our own meaning. So let's take one more deep breath together, inhaling slowly and exhaling, releasing any remaining tension. Feel the weight of your body fully supported by your bed or chair. The earth holds you just as it always has. Above, the sky, even if you can't see it now, is spread with those ancient lights. You are connected, you are okay, and you can rest. No matter what the ultimate truth is about consciousness in the cosmos, one truth remains. You are a conscious part of this cosmos, and your being here, pondering these things, adds a note to the symphony of existence. The stars may not literally applaud, but I like to think every time a mind blossoms with wonder, a star somewhere gains an extra shimmer. And now, dear listener, dear fellow stargazer, it's time to let the night carry you into sleep. You've journeyed far enough for one night. The questions can wait. The universe isn't going anywhere. It will be here when you wake, ready to fascinate you again. For now, there's nothing more you need to do, nowhere else you need to be. You're here in this moment, and that's enough. Close your eyes if they aren't closed already. Imagine that gentle canopy of stars above as a comforting blanket, each star a quiet guardian of your dreams. They flicker like distant candles, keeping watch so you can surrender to the dark with trust. You are small under the stars, yes, but not insignificant. You are a beloved child of this universe, a spark of knowing in the great unknown. In this stillness, feel the subtle exchange. You exhale, and maybe a star far away flares just a tiny bit brighter, because who's to say it doesn't? You inhale, and maybe some photon from a star finds its way into your eye or your imagination. Connection, always connection. Soon, sleep will gently embrace you. Thoughts will loosen, images will softly replace structured ideas, and you will drift in the space of your own inner cosmos. If you become aware of dreaming, maybe you'll remember to look for the stars there too. Often we carry them in our minds. But even if not, you'll carry the calm of this moment with you into rest. Let all that is unnecessary fall away now. Any lingering questions, worries, or even bits of this discussion that you clung to, you can set them down. There will be time tomorrow or in the future to think more if you want. Or you can simply let this night's experience be complete in itself without tying it up in a bow. The stars will keep shining without need of conclusion. The night doesn't demand a final statement. It welcomes the open-ended, the unresolved, the eternal wonder. In that spirit, we won't seek a firm answer. We'll just share a gentle goodnight, holding that wonder in our hearts as we do. We'll trust that being part of this universe, whether observed or unobserved by greater lights, is a treasure. And that wondering can be as fulfilling as knowing. Thank you for wandering with me under the stars. May you carry their calm light within you as you drift off. You are watched over, if not by literal star eyes, then by the natural goodness of life, by your ancestors in your memory, by the collective hopes of humanity, by whatever resonates with you as a benevolent presence. You are not alone. The night is vast but friendly when we greet it with openness. And now it is time to rest. Time to let the stars fade from conscious view and to surrender to the gentle pull of sleep like the tide drawn by moonlight. Know that you are part of something beautiful, and that's enough for today. In this quiet final moment, perhaps just listen to your own heartbeat or breath, a tiny rhythm in harmony with the larger rhythms out there. Feel yourself as a small, bright point of awareness, slowly dimming into restful slumber, like a star going behind a cloud, not gone, just cozy and quiet. Soon, we'll stop speaking and leave you in silence under the sleeping sky. Before we do, here's a final comforting thought to take with you. The same starlight that falls on you falls on everyone you love, and on countless others you'll never meet. We are all under the same sky, connected by that light. In that sense, when the stars watch one of us, they watch us all, unifying us in their gaze. We can find unity in knowing we share the night and its wonder. And with that, I invite you to let go, to drift, to dream. You've done enough for now. Let the vastness hold your questions and cares for you until you wake. They'll be gently kept. For now, simply be. Sleep is calling, soft and irresistible, like a lullaby from the distant stars. Listen closely and you might almost hear it. The hush of cosmic lullaby, the slow chant of infinity saying, rest, rest, rest. You're part of this everything and you can safely rest. So good night for now. May your sleep be deep and peaceful, your dreams illuminated by kind starlight. We've journeyed across the universe tonight in our thoughts, and now it's time to journey inward to the universe within, where rest and renewal await. Sleep well, stargazer.